After years of neglect, the Coast Guard is finally receiving the resources it needs to stop illegal immigration, to intercept drug traffickers, and to keep Americans safe at sea. Senate Republicans fought hard to secure nearly $25 billion for the Coast Guard in the One Big Beautiful Bill to fund the largest recapitalization of the Coast Guard in history. In your judgment, how big a deal is that investment in the Coast Guard?
Mr. Chairman, it is not only a historic investment, but it comes at a time where the Coast Guard was facing decades of underinvestment that resulted in a readiness spiral for us. And so this infusion of capital investment will enable us to recapitalize in the areas I just described. And that, coupled with higher sustained annual authorization and appropriations, particularly the operating funds necessary to, for example, bring on those 15,000 Coast Guard men and women, are going to enable us to be successful into the future.
I very much agree. Another element of the One Big Beautiful Bill is that we cut through layers of red tape and we gave the Coast Guard flexibility to quickly buy new ships and aircraft. This will help you address urgent readiness gaps before the funding window closes and adversaries get ahead of the U.S. In your judgment, how would backtracking and reinstating those acquisition hurdles impact the Coast Guard's ability to deliver the paid-for assets on time and on budget?
Mr. Chairman, the relief provided in the One Big Beautiful Bill Act from the regular pre-acquisition requirements in Title 14, Chapter 11, is essential for our ability to move at speed and scale to deliver the assets the Coast Guard in America needs. And so if that were to be pulled back, that would slow us down. Those requirements are originally probably intended to reduce risk, but they've resulted in delays in our ability to not move at the pace America needs us to move. And so a permanent change that allows us to not be bound by those that slow us down so we can continue to deliver at speed is vital.
Thank you. Earlier this month at Coast Guard Base Alameda, we saw what happens when anti-enforcement activism gets out of hand. During a protest by the radical left against immigration enforcement, a driver attempted to ram a truck into Coast Guard personnel. Meanwhile, the left has continued to vilify law enforcement and Homeland Security personnel simply for doing their jobs. Admiral Lundy, what message does it send to your service members when acts of aggression like this are met with political indifference?
Mr. Chairman, the safety of our Coast Guard men and women and the safety of the public is our paramount concern. In that situation, our Coast Guard men and women who were standing security were faced with an imminent threat as the driver of that truck reversed and accelerated toward them. It presented a deadly force situation. From all accounts that I know of and can see, they acted with discipline and professionalism to defend themselves and also to protect the public. The driver of that truck, there's an ongoing FBI investigation. The driver's been charged with a federal crime, but our personnel acted with discipline and restraint in that situation.
Turning to a different topic, Iran has used maritime drug trafficking in the Middle East, including trafficking drugs on fishing dhows, to finance its malign activities. I know that you are operating under the command of the Navy, but is it fair to say if the Coast Guard discovers illegal narcotics aboard a vessel in this region, these would-be drug traffickers face no punishment other than having their drugs seized?
Mr. Chairman, under the current practice under the Department of War, that is the outcome. We seize and destroy the drugs, but we do not seize the vessel.
And it's my understanding that the fishermen aboard face no legal punishment. Is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chairman, in almost all cases.
And the fishermen take control of the dhow and are allowed to continue sailing after the interdiction?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
You will not be surprised to know that I think that makes no sense whatsoever, and I very much hope the Department of War changes the protocols in those circumstances. Shifting to another topic. For too long, the Coast Guard has watched from the sidelines as Russia and China have expanded their Arctic operations with fleets of heavy icebreakers. That's why the One Big Beautiful Bill helped fund a modern icebreaking fleet. My understanding is that the Coast Guard is writing a plan, as directed by a presidential memorandum, to phase construction of the Arctic security cutters and eventually transition production to U.S. shipyards, including in the great state of Texas. What are some of the critical debates you are having about that plan, and when will it be made public?
Mr. Chairman, we're continuing to work on delivering that plan that we owe back to the President within 60 days of his October announcement. Our principal focus on that plan is to deliver an onshoring strategy. So the President determined that 4 of those Arctic security cutters would be built first overseas as part of the 2 consortiums, but then we would onshore that capability back into U.S. shipyards. That strengthens our U.S. shipbuilding industrial base, and the remaining Arctic security cutters will be built here in the U.S. by American workers.
That is enormously important capacity, and I think it's going to have profound and long-term effect. All right, final question. How do you expect the Coast Guard to take full advantage of these new Arctic security cutters to support U.S. presence and interest in the Arctic? Put another way, how will things be different for the Coast Guard in the Arctic?
Well, Mr. Chairman, as you know, the Coast Guard operates the only U.S. surface presence that accesses both of the polar regions, but particular to the Arctic, that will give us the ability to have sustained presence to challenge adversary behavior. You know, this summer we saw 5 Chinese-flagged research vessels that were operating north along our northern border, north of Alaska, along our extended outer continental shelf area. We sent the older medium icebreaker Healy up there and the new commercial icebreaker Storis that we just commissioned in August, and we ran them out of there. But we need stronger, sustained Coast Guard presence to be able to enforce U.S. sovereignty, protect our border and our maritime approaches throughout the Arctic Ocean.
I very much agree.